Join us as we take the bull by the horns as we build this 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons encounter using the Minotaur.
Stick around to the end of the video where you can find out how to win the Paint It Mini, the Unpainted Mini, and paints.
Welcome to Nerdarchy. I'm Nerdarchist Dave, for nerds by nerds, and today I'm hanging out with
Nate the Nerdarch.
Nerdarchy is a place where we share news, views, and homebrews for 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, as well as other RPGs.
Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and attune to that notification bell.
So today we're going to be talking about, we're going to be building an encounter essentially. We're going to use a Minotaur, and it is based off of the Pacesetter Games miniature that we used Vallejo Paints to paint. Or I should say, intern Jake did.
Yes.
He did a fantastic job, as you can see.
Farmed it out to the intern, and he did a great job.
Absolutely. But if you stick around, to the end of the video, you're going to find out how you can win, like Nate said, the painted version, the unpainted version, and the paints to paint the Minotaur. So the idea is we want to take this mini and not just create any old encounter. We want this to be a specific Minotaur, not any old Minotaur. And to that effect, in a previous product, we actually created the spelleater Minotaur. So this time around, we're gonna make the greater spelleater Minotaur.
Yeah. And so we're gonna kick it up with the Servant of the Horned King.
Right. So we kind of like alliteration around here. So it's gonna be Horris the Horned Lord is going to be our spelleater Minotaur, and the story behind it is he's actually the first one, right? So all other spelleater Minotaurs kind of spring from his loins or from a ritual. We're not entirely sure. We haven't really figured out how we want it to take effect. Yeah,
there's a few different ways, especially when we were discussing making the video, that we want to go different directions. And, how gruesome or how, normal you wanted to make it. We'll have to figure that out.
We will have to figure it out. So I think one of the things we kind of had figured on and we're going with is the idea that a cult of the Horned King has, gathered together. They've captured a Minotaur. They want to empower, enslave it, and make it basically into a weapon.
Yeah, specifically for this D&D encounter, we were talking about having the Minotaur being the center figure or the main bad in the encounter, and then his cultist minions transformed into some kind of cursed bugbear-like creature.
Yeah, so I guess the kind of like the story is, the cultists, they capture the Minotaur, they perform the ritual, but in doing so, they actually offend Baphomet the Horned King himself, because these are venerated beast creatures of him. Matter of fact, it's considered an honor to be transformed into a Minotaur by him. So in enacting, capturing, and enslaving this Minotaur, and not enticing it in some other means, instead of honoring their lord, they've actually offended it by in trying to enslave this Minotaur.
Now, the cultist motivation could be as simple as they've captured the Minotaur and they've done this ritual, and the player characters, they see the aftermath of this effect. Or perhaps you could even lure in the player characters early on into this encounter by having them capture a Minotaur in the first place, bring it to these well-meaning people who are paying them for the service, and then they say stick around, have some food and drink, and then suddenly this ritual is going on and taking place.
Dude, that is a great idea. You can kind of okay, they're hired, they're monster hunters, they've been hired to bring this Minotaur in alive, maybe under the pretext that it's going to be put in a zoo, or they're going to cure it or something.
Yeah, which is always harder to do than just offing something. Just dealing damage and hit points is something, the easy thing. Capturing something, it's like a little mini game inside the D&D game.
It kind of is, but I want to say in 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons it's gotten significantly easier, because all you have to do is say, no, I was doing subdual damage at the end.
Yes, that's true, that's true.
Unless you're using a fireball or something. I don't think you can subdue them with a fireball.
I subdued him. I blasted away the oxygen, so that's why he's knocked unconscious.
That's why he's unconscious. That's actually a great idea. And maybe they do stick around. They hang out with the cultists. They don't realize they're cultists. They seem like regular dudes and dudettes. But, maybe you start dropping some hints like there's some creepy vibes. And I actually kind of almost like the idea where they see the ritual, but at the very end.
Yeah.
When things go wrong. And, one of the things that goes wrong is, while they do create the spelleater Minotaur like they were trying to, They do receive Baphomet's blessing, the Horned King's blessing upon this beast, but not in the way they thought. One, maybe he increases its intellect and making it smarter. He makes it more powerful. But he's also offended because of how they went about doing it. So the cultists that actually enacted the ritual, he curses them into beast forms and turns them into these beastmen creatures. In this case, we're going to use elite bugbear stats.
They thought they were just going to get increased and upgraded into just regular Minotaurs as a gift from Baphomet for doing this act.
But instead, they get created. They turned it into some different kind of beast, which maybe is more of a punishment, and maybe part of it is too. They have to serve this Minotaur that they captured, in effect, becoming its slave and its weapon instead of the other way around, which would be a lot of fun. Whether you go with the PCs stumble upon this or not, it doesn't really matter. And also over on the website for Nerdarchy, we're going to put this encounter together for you with all the different monster stats. It'll be in the store that you can go pick it up if you want to, or you can just come up with your own stats and implement it that way. The other idea that we had was going into this was the players stumble upon this later as a threat, as caravans are being sacked and raided. So we took the encounters and we took all the numbers and kind of crunched them and put them into Kobold Fight Club to figure out what kind of a challenge this is going to be, what kind of threat this is going to be. Bugbears are normally a CR1, but we're boosting them up.
Yeah, so they end up being more of a CR3 each.
Right, and then our Minotaur Spelleater, he's going to be a CR7, and also we decided to incorporate a mage into this, which is a CR6. Now, the reason why we really want to use a mage with the Spelleater, you want to tell them about that, Nate?
Yes, it's the naturally sinister reason of, with the Spelleater, they're immune to certain level spells. And the mage is able to blast spells without a care on whether or not it's going to affect the Minotaur, because it just simply won't. So they can do area effect spells that normally a regular mage couldn't. That's going to be a nice kind of addition and hazard to the encounter itself when they've got to deal with powerful area effect spells affecting the party, but not affecting the thing within their midst.
Now, the other thing about the Spelleater Minotaur is if a spell is directed at it that it's immune to, it actually has all these runes that are on the Minotaur itself that begin to glow, and it can channel that spell energy back into its weapon attacks. So, enemy spellcasters to the Minotaur, they're actually, if they target it, they may actually make it stronger and more powerful when it attacks them.
Yeah, so the mage becomes a booster as well as a damage dealer.
Yeah, so, the mage could be casting spells at the party, and the Minotaur doesn't have to worry about it, or maybe he wants to boost the Minotaur, and he hits the Minotaur directly, knowing it's not going to harm him, but actually aid him and make him more powerful. It's like King Kong when there's a lightning storm. I don't know why that works, but it does.
I was thinking more like, I have the power, but like evil.
But like evil.
Yeah.
So when coming up with an encounter like this, what are some of the things we have to figure out?
All right. Well, we want to figure out a good location, and I would say also kind of the premise on which the PCs are meeting the encounter. So the location can kind of influence that. So I would say...
Well, also like the motivation of your villain as well.
Yes.
Which kind of, in this case, I think it really does tie into the location, because the Horned King is kind of all about savagery and the untamed wilderness and beasts. So that's going to conflict directly with civilization. And I think like this kind of enemy is going to be most effective when you put it on the outskirts of civilization, and perhaps part of what they're doing is like waging a war against civilization. Also, the Spelleater in this case wants to make more of its kind, not just Minotaurs, but Spelleater Minotaurs.
So will that cause them to question how are Spelleater Minotaurs born?
Right. So there's a couple things. One, is it a ritual by the Spelleater Minotaur slaying mages and in essence absorbing their essence, and once they've acquired enough of that, just another one bursts forth from it. It splits, however you want to do it. Or you could go with the old-fashioned way, and they actually have to breed in order to make more Spelleater Minotaurs. In previous editions of D&D, there weren't female Minotaurs, and Minotaur in itself wasn't like a true race. It had to breed with other races to make Minotaurs.
Yeah, and it was a cursed beast at that point, rather than a blessed beast from the Horned Lord.
Yes, and then like when Dragonlance came around and you had Kryn, they introduced Minotaurs as its own race, having both male and female, and breeding true and being quite different than any of the Minotaurs that came before.
And I think 5th edition for Minotaurs, I think that's the direction they're going to head towards. Similarly, how they headed towards that way in many of the half-breed races.
Yeah, they did the Waterborn, which had a Minotaur race in it for Unearthed Arcana, and then they went and did another Minotaur race, which is quite different. But I think that's going to be tied to Ravnica, and probably my understanding is when Ravnica comes out that's going to be one of the races in there.
But that's all speculation as of right now, since we don't have the books in our hands or on D&D Beyond yet.
Right.
So.
The part that's not speculation is the direction that Wizards of the Coast has gone into.
So I think this being like a blessed creature from a evil deity, an evil power, I would go with more of like maybe some kind of dark ritual to come about with it. Maybe it's just simply the runes that they have all over their body. They draw it on a regular person in mage's blood or some kind of magical creature sacrifice. Maybe they have to accumulate a certain amount, maybe 1 per rune, and they've captured somebody and they put a rune on each time, and then eventually there's enough runes that it just basically transforms the person. They become a conduit for Baphomet's power.
Yeah, I think that would definitely work. And you could also go with, in addition to that, perhaps if they do mate with another Minotaur, the offspring is always a spelleater. And maybe if you get 2 spelleaters together, that's how you get another greater. Yeah, another greater. So, the idea that he's the first greater and the first spelleater, but there can be more. It's just they're a lot more rare.
Another thing with this encounter is either they could be either hunting for raw materials if they need wizards or magical creatures.
I like how you just made wizards a material.
Raw material. Or maybe like a quaddle or some other type of goodly magical creature, unicorns, whatever you want to get the PCs riled up about, them having to like stop from happening. So those are some ways to do that. If they just need villagers and they're gonna draw some runes on them and be done, or they need to maybe hunt for another Minotaur. Those are all kind of things that the PCs could encounter them. The player characters could encounter them as they go about.
Well, the other idea too, like you just maybe think about that, is when you say another Minotaur, perhaps the town does have a zoo of monsters or creatures, and there is a Minotaur in that zoo, right? So they kind of have demanded the release, or it could even just be, a town where they've captured one, and right now it's kind of on display in the center, like kids are throwing rotten food at it, they're kind of tormenting it.
Like that hideous monster thing.
Yeah.
Throwing rocks.
Exactly, mob mentality. But, the spelleater kind of shows up with his posse and is like, hey, you're going to release that to me. And then the players show up and they have to, like, defend the town. But at the same time, too, they might not like the cruelty towards the Minotaur that's kind of been, chained up. They might want it to have more humane treatment, even if it is, a monster or evil creature. Depending, how your players feel about it. So there's like 3 different plots, 3 different ways you could use the Spelleater Minotaur with his posse of elite bugbears and his mage. And, the first being they have to go through the rigmarole of capturing the Minotaur. The ritual happens, all heck breaks loose, and they deal with the aftermath. The other is, caravans or people on the road are being attacked or kidnapped. They have to solve what's going on. Turns out, again, it's this group. And the lastly is they're looking for raw materials, as you put it, or other Minotaurs. And either way, the town has what's needed. So the player characters have to try and defend the town from the onslaught of elite bugbears and the Minotaur. And perhaps the Minotaur has raised some other forces as well, so you can kind of like build up to the finale.
Yeah, maybe orcs or some other just regular bugbears in general. Goblinoids, something.
Now, all that being said, like I said, we had plugged this into Kobold Fight Club, and this is a easy 18th level encounter to deadly 11th level encounter. So you have a whole gambit, and that's only if you use, the 4 bugbears, the mage, and the Spelleater Minotaur all together. If you break it up, it could be more manageable. And you could do it in stages and make the encounter. Like maybe they encounter the bugbears first, and later on you encounter the wizard and the minotaur by itself, or give it regular bugbears as well as another way you could decrease the difficulty level.
Yes, and that's in putting it into the computer. So your results may vary. Nerdarchy does not take claim or responsibility for any TPKs that may occur.
Absolutely. And yes, obviously, depending on the type of party you have, this is based off of 4 members to a party as well. So with that, we did mention a contest. We did mention that you could win the unpainted mini and the paints to paint them. There's going to be a link in the description for the Gleam contest with tons of different ways to enter this contest and win this fantastic mini, as well as the unpainted and paints to paint them.
Also, just like all of our contests, this one has nothing to do with YouTube or anybody else. Just pretty much enter it and see if you win.
So let us know what you think. We have a place where we can discuss it. That is down in the comments below. While you're at it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
Once again, we'd like to thank Pacesetter Games and Vallejo Acrylic Paints for sponsoring this video, as well as the contest. And you can check out that in the description below.
So until next time,
stay nerdy.